You have the next amendment designated 223, and you're recognized for 5 minutes to present your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Boebert Amendment 223 strikes the Civilian Climate Corps. During a time where employers cannot find work, this bill provides $3.5 billion for a new Civilian Climate Corps. There is absolutely no reason to funnel money toward a program like this when so many of our industries are already struggling to find workers. The duties and responsibilities of the CCC are vague and undefined. Whether it was intentional or a result from negligence is unclear. Either way, it should not be allowed. And this, Mr. Chairman, is a problem that I see on a daily basis, traveling my district and other areas where people absolutely cannot find employees to work. Every business that you go to has a help wanted sign. There are 10 million jobs unfulfilled in America right now. So this is completely unnecessary, and I urge adoption of my amendment to my colleagues. Thank you all. I yield.
Gentlelady yields. Anyone else seek to be recognized on Amendment 223?
Mr. Chairman, I seek recognition in opposition to the amendment.
Mr. Neguse, sir, you're recognized for 5.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colleagues, I strongly oppose this amendment. I would urge all of my colleagues to vote no. This committee print invests in a robust civilian climate corps that will train the next generation of American land managers, park rangers, stewards of our natural resources. It is a bold investment and a necessary response to the climate crisis, and will prioritize the maintenance and upkeep of public lands. This amendment, as I understand it, would strike literally the entire section, undermining a core component of this committee's vision for investing in the future of our public lands. And I'd be remiss not to just share, just yesterday I spent the day with constituents of mine in Larimer County, northern Colorado, with park rangers, forest supervisors, constituents, scientists, fire chiefs, including fire chiefs from across the state, in Grand County, many other communities that I have the honor of representing. And they made very clear to me, abundantly clear, the desperate need for treatments in our forests, for mitigation, for resiliency, and for folks to be able to come in and do that work. In Colorado, we had 3 of the largest wildfires literally in the history of our entire state, 2 of which happened in my district just 11 months ago. The Cameron Peak Fire and the East Troublesome Fire that ravaged our communities, and tragically, we lost lives during the course of the East Troublesome Fire in particular. This CCC program would invest billions of dollars towards doing this critical mitigation work in our national forests, addressing deferred maintenance in our national parks, causes that I believe that many of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle support. So I would hope that we could get a bipartisan vote against this amendment, and I would certainly urge my colleagues to do the same. And with that, Mr. Chair, I would yield back.
Gentleman yields. Anyone else seek to be recognized on this amendment?
Yes, the Gosar.
Mr. Gosar, sir, you're recognized.
Yes, I rise in support of this. And being one that has worked tirelessly in regards to forest mitigation, particularly in the Southwest, we don't need more people. We need people to do their job and actually get the fundamentals in place. With the 4-Fry initiative in the chairman in my home state, where we're victims right now, when there's solutions sitting on the table. We don't need people from the civilian corps. We need the people that are in proper places to make those decisions and make them appropriately and make them now. Our forests are burning, and it's because we have neglected them. And putting civilians in place here is just another aberration. We have to make sure that the people that are responsible are held accountable, and that we get this mitigation taken care of and done. For those who talk climate change, you know, this is only to volcanic eruptions. Catastrophic wildfires are one of the most polluting events in our history, into the climate. Heavy metals, carbon monoxide, all sorts of things are put into the atmosphere. So from the standpoint of, getting things right, maybe we ought to address the Forest Service, the 4-Fry initiatives, these processes where we engage the private sector in scientific things that actually work. I was with the Park Service yesterday, and they claimed once again that not cleaning our national forest is a problem waiting to continue to happen. We become victims instead of empowered solution advocates. So I love the gentle lady's amendment because it prioritizes making sure that people that have the responsibility be held accountable. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Anyone else wish to be recognized in the amendment?
Yes, Mr. Chair, Vince here.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I support this amendment, and let me explain why. The Civilian Conservation Corps was originally conceived of by the Roosevelt administration many years ago when unemployment stood at 20% and people couldn't find a job anywhere. The idea was an interesting idea and resulted in many projects, some of them not far from where I sit right now, out here in Eastern Oregon, where the folks came in and helped build ditches and canals necessary for irrigation systems. But there was a huge difference between then and now, and I mentioned it, 20% unemployment. I met several weeks ago with folks that are engaged in the exact type of thing we've heard mentioned that this CCC, this CC02.20, would engage in. The folks that are out actually cleaning up the forest, they cannot find anyone that wants to work for them. They cannot find anybody that actually wants to go out into the hot, smoky, dirty environment and actually do this work, even though they're offering more than the $15 an hour that's suggested in this legislation. So this is what I call one of many self-delusional parts of this bill. And so why would we think that suddenly people are going to jump at running out and doing really, really, really hard, dirty, dangerous work because we offer them $15 an hour? That's not what's going to happen. That's not where this bill is going to go. And what I see instead is what we saw in the Wall Street Journals. They commented on this concept, which was to say that what we'll have is trained up folks that go around and lecture everybody on how they should act. Well, I'm not inclined to support a program that builds our youth into those who come around to lecture us. Now, perhaps if there was something in here that said, yeah, you actually have to go out and work at it, and I mean work. I've fought fire before. I've planted trees before, and I'll tell you, it's hard work, and that's why nobody's taking those jobs right now, Mr. Chair, and that's why I support this amendment. I urge everybody to vote for it. Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Chairman,
Anyone seek to be recognized?
Velasquez here.
Representative, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I oppose this amendment because it's a poison pill that is designed to eventually prevent our ability to invest in our country and build back better for those who deserve it most. Today, the scenes of flooding from Ida in my district and across New York City are devastating. There have never been a greater need to build climate resilient infrastructure and to have a strong civilian climate corps. This is a visionary policy that will create a government jobs program, putting a new generation of Americans to work combating the climate crisis. And for that reason, I oppose it. I yield back.
Thank you. I thank the gentlelady for her comments, and she yields back. Anyone else wants to be recognized?
Mr. Chairman, it's Westerman.
Sir, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know you love to hear me debate these amendments, and so I thought I would give you that opportunity one more time here. It won't be the last.
No, and having been in a ranking member as well, Mr. Westerman, yeah, that's your job, and I did mine pretty well, and I expect you to do yours pretty well too. So
We're trying
you're
every day.
recognized.
And that's why I support this amendment, because it is a good amendment that will ensure that the money proposed today will not be used to create an FDR-era big government jobs program. There are a lot of problems with the resurrection of the CCC. Mr. Bentz described that very well. The original CCC was put in place when unemployment rates were through the roof. We were experiencing a depression. Today, employers cannot find workers. My grandfather worked for the CCC, and I remember him telling me how terrible it was, how backbreaking the work was, and he was a hard worker. And I tell you, the first thing he did when he could get a job working at the aluminum smelter was he took that job at the aluminum smelter. We don't need another FDR-era program. And the idea that this is going to help land management, I think, is a false idea as well. The problem with land management in this country is not a lack of labor, it's a lack of being able to actually manage the land. You could create a massive workforce, and I guess you're going to equip them with axes and shovels and rakes to go out and try to fix the inherent problem with the overstocked stands of timber. But when you're talking about 80 million plus acres of land that needs attention, I don't even think that China could get enough manual laborers to address that kind of an issue in a right amount of time, especially if they didn't have the authority to go out and actually manage the forest. So what this is just opening the door for creating an inefficient and ineffective federal work program. And we already have, as it's been mentioned, private groups who are doing this kind of work. If young people want to go do hard manual labor on public land, there are plenty of opportunities for them to do that. And we're going to create another federal program that's going to compete not only with the private sector, but with nonprofits that are doing this very work right now. We should be focusing on ways to actually manage our federal lands, not to throw a lot of money at a program that's going to compete with the private sector and get little benefit on the ground for making our federal lands more resilient and making our forests healthier. Again, I support this amendment. We shouldn't be throwing billions of dollars at a government work program when unemployment rates are low and the private sector can't find employees, and I yield back.
Gentlemen yield. Anyone else wish to be recognized? Let me recognize myself in closing very quickly. I'm violating my own rule here, but I think this debate and in opposition to the amendment, I think it comes down to a couple of things, if I may. It comes down to about rebuilding interior and rebuilding our land management and water responsible agencies within our jurisdiction. And the civilian corps, targeting young people, targeting diversity, and targeting those is not just about brawn. Yes, jobs in these areas require people to get their hands dirty, Mr. Westerman, but it also requires them to know what they're doing. And that is a whole spectrum in the profession. And this is the backfill for the future. And I think that not only Mr. Negus's legislation, but also the intent of for the future for the land agencies and interior is to build toward that future. And I think we need to look at it that way as well, that it's an investment in the management and the stewardship of our public lands and waters for the future. And I think it's a good one. And I oppose the amendment. Anything else? Anybody else wish to be recognized?
Mr. Chairman,
Who seeks?
McClintock of California.
Sir, you're recognized. Thank you.
You're welcome, sir. I've noticed over the years that when one bureaucracy fails, we have this tendency to add more bureaucracy rather than ask ourselves why the first ones failed. The fact is, we've got a great many conservation corps already. We've got the youth conservation corps, we've got public land corps. On top of these, you can add similar state programs like the California Conservation Corps. And of those, then you add the sprawling bureaucracies of the U.S. Forest Service, National Park Service, Bureau of Land Management. Need I go on? The problem is not that we don't have enough bureaucracies, it's we have too many, all enforcing idiotic laws and regulations that have made competent management of our public lands impossible. And let me add one final concern to this, this new climate change corps. There's one feature of the proposal that does not overlap a lot of existing agencies. This bureaucracy of young people will also address the changing climate. What exactly does that mean? Does it mean a taxpayer-funded community organizing effort, sending these young climate pioneers into every neighborhood to report who's watering their lawn, whose fireplace is smoking, who's spreading forbidden climate disinformation? A few years ago, such fears would have seemed absurd, but not so much these days. So I'd ask, what exactly is this new bureaucracy going to accomplish? I yield back.
Disconnected. You're using computer for audio. I disconnect.
Does anyone else wish to be recognized? There is no further debate. The question is on the